Most of us are familiar with the promise that Jesus makes in today's gospel: faith and mustard seed, the size of faith to the size of mustard seed. And I think we all understand the larger point that Jesus is trying to make through this parable, that if we have a little bit of faith, that's enough to work wonders in our life. But I also think most of us have struggled with the lack of faith in our life at some point in our life. If I just had more faith, God would answer my prayers. If I just had more faith, he would not have died or she would have recovered. If I just had more faith, I would be more involved in the church. If I just had more faith, I would be a better person, a better husband, better wife, better parent, better child. We have asked these questions regarding the struggles of our faith, regarding the lack of faith. The apostles, as we hear in the gospel, had the same trouble. So our consolation is that our struggles are as old as the faith of the apostles. The apostles felt that struggle, and they come to their master Jesus and say, "Lord, increase our faith." Just to give a little background, right before this passage, Jesus instructed them about not causing scandal to others. If your hand causes you to sin, cut it off. If your eye causes you to sin, pluck it out. Don't be a stumbling block for others. So Jesus instructed them about sin. And then after that, he told them to forgive as often as an offender repents, even if it is like 7 times a day. So very difficult, challenging teachings, and then the apostles felt that's impossible for us, these challenges, with whatever faith they felt they had. And so they come to Jesus and say, "Lord, increase our faith." It's absolutely, we feel impossible to follow your instructions, your teachings. We need an increase of faith. And they were very reasonable in their request. Someone once said, if McDonald's can supersize our hamburgers, fries, and drinks, why not ask Jesus to supersize our faith? So the apostles just did that, wanted stronger faith. The scriptures does not record that the request was granted. But what we know is that they were challenged. They were told, if your faith were to be like the size of a mustard seed, you could tell this mulberry tree to be uprooted and planted in the sea, and it would obey you. The implication is that the apostles did not have faith in Jesus yet, or there was no evidence of their faith. What Jesus was asking of his apostles and all of us today is not an increase in the knowledge of catechism, but it is rather a deeper and stronger trust and confidence in God, even when God seems to be at a distance in our life. Being a follower of Jesus or having faith in God does not necessarily eradicate all our difficulties, sufferings. Of course, God has promised His love for us, but He has never promised a life free of suffering. Once I was in our priest group, faith group, discussing, and one of my friends said, Jesus should have never promised three things. One is, ask and it shall be given to you, in Matthew chapter 7. And in Matthew chapter 18, where Jesus says, where two have come to an agreement and ask my Father will give it to you. The second promise. And the third promise is from today's gospel. If you have faith the size of a mustard seed and tell this mulberry tree to be uprooted and planted in the sea, it would obey you. So he was of the opinion that these three promises set us up for disillusionment whenever we don't find them in our life, these promises fulfilled. But why did Jesus make these promises? Jesus wants us to have a faith that also looks at our life from God's perspective, not just our own perspective. Jesus wants us to look at things in our life even from God's perspective. He wants us to let God be God in our life. And He has shown that in His whole life. Jesus has, even He prayed while He was in the Garden of Gethsemane, Lord, Father, this cross is too heavy for me. Take it away. This cup of suffering, take it away. But that mulberry tree became His cross on which He died. And Jesus realized that having faith in His Father did not mean that automatically He will take away His sufferings. Nor did He realize that when God did not take away His sufferings, God still loved Him. He said, you are my beloved Son. That's what God does to each one of us. When we ask for increase in faith, when we ask Him to strengthen us in our faith, it does not mean He is going to take away our sufferings, our hardships. Instead, He gives us the opportunity to look at things from God's perspective, from His point of view. The other point that today's readings invite us to contemplate is, how do we increase our faith? How do we strengthen our faith? And St. Paul tells Timothy in the second reading, do not be content with the gift that you have received. Fan into flame the gift that God has given you. And we know St. John Paul II, he said, for our faith to increase, it must be handed on. We must be a witness to our faith. And we have some wonderful people, saints, in our faith journey. The two come to my mind as I reflect on this is St. Teresa of Lisieux, or the Little Flower. It took for her just 24 years just to become one of the most beloved saints and one of the greatest doctors of the church, because she lived her faith the little way. Small acts of kindness, small acts of love, just within our own community, Carmelite community. Did not ever leave the campus. The other great role model we have is another woman saint who took her name, Mother Teresa, whom today we call her Saint Teresa of Calcutta. She did the same thing. She literally moved mountains with her little faith. Her message that God does not expect us to do great things, but He expects us to do little things, but with great love. This message has touched millions of people of all faith, even people with no faith. They are her followers. So today, as we contemplate on our faith, let us ask for the opportunity. Let us ask for the grace to grab the opportunities, to give witness, to hand on our faith by witnessing to it wherever we may be.